Safety Regional Dispatching advisory focusing on dispatching. Before we kick things off, I do want to start off with some housekeeping to make sure that we're all on the same thing, or same page. First things first, if you're up for it, we do ask that you consider turning on your camera. It is optional, but we do find that it helps with the feeling of connection and engagement in the group. Also, this is a quick reminder to keep your microphone muted unless you're called on. This helps with background noise to minimize and ensure everyone can hear each other loud and clear. We're all about participation. So if you have any questions or thoughts, please go ahead and drop them in the chat. We'll get to them at the end of each segment. We do want to inform you that this meeting is being recorded. This is for our records and also will be available to you afterwards to revisit anything we discuss. With this in mind, folks, let's have a fantastic discussion and dive on in. I'm going to pass it over to Hillary to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Hillary Tellison. I'm the senior project manager at Valley Vision. So I want to say thank you, first of all, to Liz Kilkenny, who just was speaking to you. If you're on the panel or have been part of this event, Liz is the one who's been bringing everybody together, sending us the reminders and getting us prepared for this advisory today. So I really want to thank her for that. And so Liz and I both work for Valley Vision. And those of you who might be joining us for the first time, Valley Vision is a civic leadership organization whose mission is to bring communities together to tackle the region's biggest challenges and ensure a more livable future. 21st Century Workforce is one of our organization's multiple impact areas, and we serve as a regional organizer to facilitate employer, industry, and community collaboration, which is what we're doing here today. Valley Vision wants to connect and align. Those are two main goals of our advisories. We hope that bringing industry stakeholders together to review the state of the specific industry sector will generate meaningful, data-driven initiatives to create a stronger regional talent pipeline that preps our workforce for success. Today, we are incredibly grateful for our speakers and all of you for taking the time to discuss this important industry of dispatching careers in our region. And with that, I want to introduce our planning committee, who really helped us make connections, helped us form, the focus of this advisory. And so I want to thank Jill Alcorn, who's Associate Dean of the Continuing Education of Sierra College, and Karen Hubbard, the Director of Employer Partnerships, Health and Public Safety. And I just wanted to give them just a moment to say any welcome or any thoughts that they wanted to share before we get going.
I'll take a second to jump in before Karen. No, I just want to say thank you for everyone for being here. And we got involved thanks to Karen Hubbard, connecting us as part of our larger Far North consortium. But this issue came up to about a year ago for us, not quite a year ago, in conversations that we're having with our local public safety agencies. So we're really excited. They expressed that this is a huge need, something that we as a college weren't really aware of. And so it's been great to start to dive into all of the details with our industry partners to really learn more. And our hope is that from the end of this, we can start to develop some additional education, courses, certificates, whatnot, that hopefully will be helping better prepare future employees for dispatch. So again, thanks very much.
Thank you, Jill. Karen?
I just want to thank everybody for being here today, and Jill and Valley Vision, because it's always a pleasure working with Jill on any events that we have together. And Valley Vision always makes these types of meetings very easy to work within as well. So thank you all.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Jill. And I'm going to kick it back over to Liz to go over the agenda.
Awesome. So we're currently wrapping up the welcome and introduction. We're going to move into our first session, Behind the Call, Public Safety Dispatchers, which will be delivered by Jennifer Dwyer from Post about their Public Safety Dispatchers program. Next, we're going to move on to the labor market and trend analysis from Ebony Benzing, the interim director from the Centers of Excellence. which will help us understand the dynamics of the labor market's current trends and the potential for future developments. And then following that, we'll have an engaging panel discussion with experts from the field, employers, and we'll also have an employer highlight from Lieutenant David Smith at the end before our conclusion. I would also like to thank all of the sponsors who have continuously aided in our efforts to plan and execute these events. These advisories are primarily funded from the community colleges through the Strong Workforce Program funds. Our region is the North Region Community Colleges, which includes Los Rios Community College District, Sierra College, Lake Tahoe College, Woodland, and Yuba College. In addition, we have funding from the workforce boards in the Capital Region. That includes SETA, Sacramento Works, Golden Sierra Job Training, the North Central County Consortium, and YOLA Works.
Thank you, Liz. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to Jennifer Dwyer, who will be giving our keynote address today. Jennifer Dwyer is a Staff Services Manager 1 specialist with the California Commission on Peace Office Standards and Training, otherwise known as POST. Currently, she is managing the Public Safety Dispatcher Program, focusing on elevating and updating the hiring standards and training requirements for public safety dispatchers in the state of California. Jennifer is a graduate of the POST Master Instructor Certification course and holds a bachelor's degree in Justice Administration with a concentration in emergency management. Additionally, she's also a member of California Office of Emergency Services, CalOS. Folks, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Jennifer Dwyer. And if you have any trouble taking over hosting, Jennifer, just let us know.
Okay, I'm going to give it a try. We will see what happens.
I might need to stop sharing, so let me. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay.
Okay. Give me just a second to start the slideshow, and then I'll be able to share it with you guys. All right, can you guys see a screen that says Public Safety Dispatcher Program?
Sure can.
Great. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you so much, Hillary and Liz and the rest of the team there at Valley Vision for allowing me to participate today. It's such an honor to be able to talk about a huge, important profession and honor public safety dispatchers. Prior to joining POST, I was a dispatcher for almost 16 years. I actually started my career in Southeast Georgia and then lateraled to California. So I've been through hiring standards for 2 different states, and being able to compare and contrast them has been an interesting part of the journey as well. I do want to share some of the just selection requirements, some background information on the POST program for dispatchers, and some other options that are available for training for public safety dispatchers in the state of California. There we go. So part of the selection requirements that POST has established is that dispatchers participate in a test. The test has to test the verbal reasoning and memory abilities of your dispatchers. POST offers a written exam that's done by Scantron. We, through a process and training proctors, would send it out to the field. They would administer the exam, send it back to us to scoring, and then we return the scores. Another option is to find a third-party vendor that can give the same format that we require. So the same areas we require testing in can be done by a third-party vendor. One of the ones that's very popular, I've taken myself throughout my career as well. So it's really up to the agency as far as cost and what's going to be most efficient and effective for them to use. Both of them are completely acceptable to use as long as there is a testing component as part of the hiring process. The next selection requirement is that they take the oral communication assessment, essentially an interview. I feel like most of us are probably already interviewing candidates that we're hiring for a multitude of positions. This just reinforces it by adding it to regulation. Public safety dispatchers are also required to participate in a background investigation. They have to complete a personal history statement, such as providing addresses of where they've lived, neighbors, family members, friends, and references. Then those references are asked to provide references. So it's a very thorough, complete documentation. They'll need to provide information about their highest level of education. If there's been any marriages, divorces, all that kind of stuff is disclosed in a personal history statement that is provided by post. Another good resource for agencies, if you're looking at maybe some other areas to add to your background investigation, we do have access to our background investigation manual that's located on our website under the publications tab. Please take a look at that. The backgrounds for your peace officers are very different from your dispatchers. And so it's up to you to decide if you want to set higher standards than we do. But please know that the personal history statements and the background information is different from what needs to be gathered for the separate classifications. Dispatchers are also required to have a medical evaluation. It's a simple physical, a hearing test, a vision test. One of the things that I will get asked about often is, what is the score to pass the written selection test? The beauty of it is you as the agency determine what that passing score is. Your candidates and employees should be a representation of your community. We recommend that your score be between 48 and 57. You establish that. It does not get reported to us. If you use our test, we simply score your exams and send them back. We don't tell you who has passed, who has failed. You as the agency make that determination on your own. Another selection requirement that I will get asked about often is, what about a psychological assessment? Currently, that is not required within regulation. You as an agency can decide to set a higher standard and require that. There are a lot of agencies that do. I have taken one for every agency that I worked with. So it's a very common practice to do that. Currently, right now, though, it is not part of our regulations. When I first came onto Post, I wanted to start with updating the content for the basic course. Before we could do that, we needed to take a look at our job task analysis. We wanted to measure the knowledge, skills, traits, and abilities needed to have a successful candidate pass training and become an efficient dispatcher. Prior to the update that was published on our website last year, this job task analysis had not been updated since the mid-90s. Our jobs have changed tremendously since then. Hopefully nobody's still on paper, but the profession has come a long way, and that meant that knowledge, skills, traits, and abilities needed to evolve as well. There was a survey that was sent out throughout the state of California. It was a couple hours long to get through, which is a lot to ask for busy dispatchers who are already trying to work a console and whatnot. We got back an overwhelming response. We had over 25% return on the survey, which is huge, which to me then just shows additionally the support that we have from the field who are like, yes, we need to move this program forward. We need to update it and modernize it. If you have a chance to go to our publications tab and check out the job task analysis, it's not a light read. I like it because it's got charts in it. And so I'm a visual person. The pie charts really help me out. So on the previous slide, I mentioned that psychological assessments are not one that we require you have. However, we did ask that question in the survey for the job task analysis. And you'll see that almost 77% of the respondents do require their dispatchers to take the psychological assessment. So that's something that we need to look into and determine whether or not that is something we need to codify in regulation and start making it a requirement across the board. But I just wanted to include that slide. So if some of you heard me say you don't have to do it and we're thinking, oh gosh, I've been doing it, you're part of the vast majority who is. So we want to take that into consideration when we're helping our agencies, recruit and train and get people into this rewarding profession. Another fun fact about the job task analysis is that we had such a wide representation of various sized and typed agencies, and we had somebody from 49 of the 58 counties represented in the survey, which is huge, which to me says, okay, we hit the mark. We did get a huge sampling of the entire state. There is a page in the job task analysis that breaks it down by county. So if you're curious to see how your county, Sacramento, Yolo, Placer is ranking on that list, there is a chart that does demonstrate that information. So to change things at Post is not a simple task. A lot of the stuff that we are given is legislatively driven. So we are constantly tracking trends in the Capitol. So any type of Senate bill or Assembly bill, we monitor and track it. try to be as proactive as we can when we can, right? We all want to be proactive. A lot of times law enforcement's reactive because we're waiting for this legislation to come through. We get ahead of it when we can, but we can't just go, okay, this bill passed, here's this new training. We have to take anything new to the commissioners, and the commissioners are governor appointed. They're different ranking officials throughout law enforcement to include public members. The commissioners will meet on a quarterly basis. So any business that is brought between them is done on a very tight schedule. They're all public meetings following the Bagley-Keene Act. So anybody is welcome to attend them in person or stream them online. The agendas are made public, so you will be aware of anything that's going to be discussed at these meetings. The commissioners then will make a motion on whatever recommendation we have. So for example, to update the basic dispatchers training course, I had to go before the commission and present the new curriculum. And they had to take a vote and decide whether or not to adopt or give me another direction. They voted to adopt the curriculum, which is an exciting feat for me because that course had not been updated since 2011. So it's the same course I took when I became a dispatcher in California. So first full circle moment for me to be able to work on updating that. But that wasn't done there. So the commissioners approved it. It has to go through the Office of Administrative Law, which is essentially the lawyers that represent the state of California. So even then, that's another time-consuming process. Some of our projects that get approved will have a fiscal component. And if that happens, then it's the Department of Finance also needs time to review and approve additional training requirements and whatnot. So as much as I would like to say, yes, it passed, there's new content coming, there's still a process that has to happen. And I will admit, as being a dispatcher for 16 years, I have dispatch speed, which is significantly faster than most of the government processes. So having to learn to navigate that has been interesting, but it's really great oversight. So that way, you know, as the field, we're not just sitting up here in Sacramento going, you guys should do this, and we're just going to put it out there for you. There's so many different levels of review that happens before new content is pushed out to the field to be utilized for hiring and training. I want to touch on, talked about the hiring standards, the basic training components for public safety dispatchers. There's a basic course I mentioned was 120 hours, last updated 2010, 2011. Some of them got a little bit of a refresh. June of last year, the commission approved it to change to 160 hours. So we're adding a whole other week on. It's still tied up in the Office of Administrative Law, Department of Finance component. So it's not out to the field yet. We're hoping very soon, and there will be lots of mass notification from Post. We're not just going to say, hey, starting tomorrow, everybody has to have this. There'll be lots of outreach and communication that happens with the agencies. In addition to completing their basic training as a dispatcher, they have to get their continued professional training. So we call it CPT. It runs on a 2-year cycle, and they're required 24 hours every 2 years. As an agency, you can decide we want our dispatchers to have 60, 80, whatever you feel is appropriate. But for Post, they have to have a minimum of 24. And that stuff is reviewed when the regional consultants come out to agencies. They're looking at the files for people that were hired to make sure everything in the background was done properly, to make sure the selection standards were used, that they've attended the basic training course, and that they are getting their CPT training in. When people are first hired, there is a grace period. So you have time to get them trained and get them going before you have to worry about sending them out to get those extra 24 hours of training. Beyond that, it's up to you as an agency to decide how to encourage professional development with your dispatchers. We do offer a series of advanced training classes. There's a dispatch supervisor course. As of the last few years, dispatch supervisors have been invited to participate in the Sherman Block Leadership Institute. Our SLI program is very prestigious. So being able to now include dispatchers into that program is huge, and I think an honor, and we should all encourage everybody that can to take that class. Another route that they can explore is the Instructor Development Institute, our IDI program. If they have any interest in training, we always need people to train the basic dispatcher course or even those CPT classes. The IDI program is phenomenal. There's multiple levels. I've gone all the way through, as Hillary mentioned, and I'm a master instructor. There's also the option to participate in Command College, and these are courses that are mixed with our sworn partners. So to really become more of a team and cohesiveness and do trend tracking together, I think is an amazing opportunity. Post also offers professional certificates for dispatchers. Some of them are required on the peace officer side. On the dispatcher side, it's going to be up to the dispatcher to make sure they're getting it. Some agencies will use those as pay incentives. So if you're looking for laterals, some of them might be looking at agencies that offer incentives for certificates, and we offer all the way up through a supervisor type certificate for the public safety dispatchers. All right, I feel like I'm getting close. All right, any questions that I can answer?
I know there was one in the chat. D'Angelo, do you want to read that question out?
Yeah, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. From Chris Hubbard. Do all dispatch incentives go through the post training? I think he specifically talking about fire and ambulance.
No, so only members of the post program are required to attend the post training. So if you are working at a comm center that is fire service only, currently there is no post equivalent on the fire side. The agency can decide to send them to the post course, but they are not required to. Only post participating agencies are required to attend that course.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Sure.
Okay.
And in
Jennifer.
chat.
Oh, sorry, was there another question?
Okay,
Jennifer, if you could stop sharing.
there you go.
Great. And Liz or D'Angelo, oh, there we go. I'm seeing for some reason, I'm not seeing, I'm gonna just share my screen real quick. We're gonna introduce our next, oopsie, let me go this way. Ebony. Liz, do you want to go ahead and introduce Ebony while I make her a co-host?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jennifer. We really appreciate your time with us today. Next up, we do have Ebony Bensing. She's from the North Far North Center for Excellence and is the interim director. And I already beat you to it, Hillary, and I already made her co-host. So Ebony, you are good to go.
Thank you. Now I'll stop sharing so you can share.
All right, perfect. Give me a second to get set up here. All right, let me get this out of the way. So you guys aren't, are you guys seeing slides or are you seeing something else?
Seeing slides.
All right, perfect. And we'll think it's a little funky. All right, cool. Hi, my name is Ebony Joy Benzing, and I do have an exciting update. I am no longer interim. I am the official yet waiting on approval from the board director for the North Greater Sacramento Center of Excellence. So the mission of the COE, our collective mission is to support the development of career education programming in California community colleges. And we do that by providing labor market data related analyses to determine what jobs are in demand and what skills are in demand and whatnot to help just inform those programs. So I'm here today to talk about public safety telecommunicators. That is the official occupational title, but we also call them public safety dispatchers or simply dispatchers. So for the next couple of slides, we're going to take a look at the demand for public safety dispatchers, the composition or the demographic composition of workers employed in these roles in Sacramento, and some of the educational requirements related to employment. So the primary role of public safety dispatchers is to receive and communicate requests for emergency assistance relayed through 911, public safety calls, and emergency operations centers. Dispatchers relay this information from the public safety organizations, and they must also be able to support 911 callers by providing instructions based on their own knowledge of safety, law enforcement, fire response, and emergency medical procedures. Across Greater Sacramento, there is a projected 94 annual job openings for public service dispatchers each year for the next 5 years. In terms of scale, i.e., how big is this number in comparison to other job openings? It's not high, it's not low, it's about moderate. The demand for dispatchers across our region is moderate. Now, in terms of wages, that's this data right here. Analysis of wage data shows that public safety dispatchers do earn a living wage. The graphic here shows the entry level and median annual wages of dispatchers employed in Greater Sacramento in 2022. The annual entry level wage is just over $59,000 a year, which translates to around $28 an hour. And the median annual wage of $72,758 translates to nearly $35 an hour. So this chart shows the historical and projected job changes for public safety dispatchers in Greater Sacramento. Between 2017 and 2022, jobs for dispatchers increased at a higher than average rate of nearly 18%. That's about 110 new jobs added to our region in those last 5 years. Looking forward, dispatcher jobs in our region are projected to continue to grow, but at a slower rate than what has happened in the last 5 years. Greater Sacramento is projected to add about 90 new dispatcher jobs to the region by 2027. These tables and the chart provide a demographic workers employed as public safety dispatchers in Greater Sacramento. Public safety dispatchers are primarily individuals who identify as female. And the typical public safety dispatcher is a white or Latina female between the ages of 25 and 44 years old. Now, in terms of the level of education and training that's typically needed for employment as a public safety dispatcher, job candidates should have a minimum of a high school diploma or an equivalent. And they will require a moderate amount of on-the-job training, which falls somewhere between, for us, for research purposes, is categorized as between 1 to 12 months. In actuality, it's not all the way up to that 12 months. We'll take a closer look at what those specific training requirements are in the job postings and educational supply section. Across the nation, more than half of the workers employed as public safety dispatchers have either attended some college or have earned an associate's degree. And while an associate's degree is not required for these jobs, the post-public safety dispatcher's 120-hour basic course is an entry-level training requirement for employment in public agencies that participate in post. That's kind of a mouthful, but if the agency is connected to post, this is the training that those individuals would need to go through. I'm saying this because it's a really important distinction to make, because when we get into the job postings analysis, not all dispatchers or not all dispatching jobs that show up in that data are required to go through the post training. So now we're going to get into the job postings analysis for public safety dispatcher positions that have been advertised online across the Greater Sacramento region for the last 12 months. While we did our best to clean up the data and focus on public safety roles in particular, you'll see there's an interesting mix of public safety and non-public safety job postings. And I think that has to do with some of like the job titling and an crossover of skills that are needed in these roles. So overall, we were able to identify 167 relevant online job postings that were related to the public safety dispatcher occupation. Taking a high-level view at just this data from like looking at it, some of the top job titles were dispatchers, public safety dispatchers, and police or sheriff dispatchers, so pretty common titles. And some of the employers with the most online job postings included the city of Elk Grove. Ohana Gardens, which is a cannabis delivery service, was popping up in here, so that's an interesting find. the city of Sacramento, Sac State, and Sacramento County. Again, we do have postings from other agencies. I'm just kind of pulling from the top here. Now, one of the things I wanted to do was take a little bit more of a nuanced look at this data, because when you're just looking at like top level and you're seeing kind of top titles, top employers, it doesn't really get you a holistic picture of what's happening. So what we did was we sorted the job title, the job postings into different categories based off the type of employer. So we're like looking at the name of the employer and we're like, okay, what kind of agency is that? And we're kind of sorting them into 3 different buckets. The first agency type that emerged was law enforcement related agencies, which include police and sheriff departments, California Highway Patrol, cities and counties advertising for these roles, as well as local colleges and universities. Then there were medical agencies, which were primarily private ambulance and non-emergency transport companies. And lastly, there was an other category, which captured everything else, including public transit, delivery firms, logistics companies, casinos, and plumbing and AC repair contractors. So all of these different types of agencies hire some type of dispatcher. Now, the other side of the slide compares the job titles across the 3 agency types. I also provided the number of employers that I counted in each of these buckets. So first up, well, actually, with the exception of the 911 call taker job title, which is seen right here, there is a lot of overlap between dispatcher job titles, which kind of helps me understand how these postings might end up grouped together all underneath this umbrella of public safety. Another interesting note about job postings when we were going through the analysis, though it's not shown on this slide, is that the advertised pay for dispatchers seems to be higher for positions affiliated with law enforcement. However, we need to do a little bit more analysis to confirm if that's actually the truth or not. This slide compares the most in-demand skills across the 3 different agency types. Overall, the in-demand skills for law enforcement related dispatchers seems more technical than what's required for medical and other dispatching jobs. Something that caught my attention was the inclusion of this punctuation and capitalization as a top in-demand skill for both law enforcement and other dispatching jobs. What this suggests to me is that job candidates must have strong written and probably oral communication skills. Now, this last slide in the job posting section shows the overall employment requirements for dispatchers across all 3 groups, as well as specific requirements for law enforcement related dispatchers. This information comes directly from the job postings. In general, dispatchers must have received a high school diploma and have a driver's license. Beyond that, employment requirements vary based on the agency type. Take law enforcement, for instance. Law enforcement typically has a higher bar to clear for employment, and most candidates for these jobs must also complete the post 120-hour basic dispatcher course. I also noticed that law enforcement agencies tended to require an additional emergency medical dispatch certification from either the International Academy of Emergency Dispatch or the National Academy of Emergency Dispatch. I suspect those two things are the same. But this was something that could be earned while on the job. When it comes to medical transport companies, they tend to require that their dispatchers hold some type of certified medical dispatch license, and the companies themselves tended to follow guidelines set by the California Emergency Medical Services Authority. Now, looking specifically at law enforcement positions, so we kind of focused in on law enforcement, and then we were paying attention to like, what are those job titles? What are the requirements for those roles? These were some of the things that kind of emerged at the top, basically, for these 2 specific positions. So first of all, there were at least 2 distinct positions in the advertisements: entry-level dispatchers and lateral or level 2 dispatchers. There were slightly more job ads for lateral and level 2 dispatcher positions than there were for the entry-level dispatcher positions. Entry-level positions typically require a high school diploma and 1 to 2 years of public-facing or public service job experience, as well as sometimes a minimum typing speed. The lateral and level 2 positions required at least 2 years of working experience as an entry-level dispatcher, with a slight preference for that experience to come from within the same organization. They also required the post 120-hour basic dispatcher course and the IAED certification. That's the emergency medical dispatch certification. Based on what I'm seeing in the data, it seems that growth in dispatcher positions, especially from entry level to level 2, can most definitely happen on the job. It also suggests that from a workforce development perspective, there may be specific choke points in recruitment into these different roles. The first point that I was thinking of was the finding and attracting candidates into entry-level positions. Having 2 years of customer experience opens up other avenues into retail and sales and some other fields. Folks with this level of experience may not necessarily think of dispatching as a customer service-oriented job, so they may not be attracted to these positions. And then there may be a pressure point in having entry-level dispatchers move up to level 2. I've been thinking that maybe moving from that entry-level position to level 2 might be contingent on demonstrating a higher level of proficiency with the technical, as well as the social emotional aspects of these jobs. For the last part of my presentation, we're going to go ahead and take a look at educational supply. So what are the training programs that are in our region and how many graduates do they have? First, we'll start by taking a look at community colleges, and I have this broad disclaimer. Public safety dispatching programs in our region are not programs per se that end in a certificate or a degree. They are a single course. Within the community college space, we were able to identify 4 relatively closest programs at American River College here in Sacramento and at Butte and Napa Valley Colleges, which is about a 1 to 1.5 hour drive from Sacramento. The 4th option, which is listed here, and I'm saying it's close, is really not close because it's 5 hours away in Bakersfield. Community colleges typically offer a 6 to 7 unit course that aligns with post requirements for basic dispatching, and the courses are designed to be completed in about a month. I think it was around 3 weeks. ARC also happens to offer advanced and specialty training related to dispatching. Now, the other option for training in our region is through Post itself. This list shows the upcoming basic dispatcher trainings offered through Post, with 3 options in Northern California and 2 in SoCal. Back in 2020, I had a request come in from one of the colleges around potentially developing a new dispatcher program. And I had a conversation with the training coordinator for Sacramento Police Department and learned that most basic dispatch training programs only admit law enforcement affiliated candidates. What that means is that the individual already has to have the job to be able to go through the training. The only center that I know of so far that offers training to non-affiliated candidates is the center in San Jose, the South Bay Regional Training Consortium. However, back in 2020, the wait list for that non-affiliated training was about 4 years long. To close out my presentation, I thought I'd kind of speak a little bit more of what I learned about hiring for law enforcement related dispatchers. This is through conversations that I've had with folks over the last couple of years. There seems to be a mix of approaches when it comes to finding and hiring appropriately credentialed dispatchers. Some law enforcement agencies hire candidates only after they've completed the post 120-hour training program. The challenge with that approach is that there are very few programs that accept individuals without already having a job in the field, and getting into a training program can take up to 4 years. So that kind of adds some lag time in getting that individuals into the workforce. Some agencies also hire candidates and send them through training. And while this approach may be a little bit faster, dispatch courses are limited in size and they can only take up to a certain number of students. What that means is that if you're an agency here in Sacramento and you're using this approach, you may be sending employees to training wherever you can get them in, including all the way down to Southern California. Now, with regard to training options, some agencies outsource their training while others conduct it in-house. And again, there's limitations with outsourcing training, especially in terms of availability, but conducting your own training may be a little bit more of a costly endeavor because of the commitments for the materials and the resources and the time that needs to be invested into those programs. Ideally, you're using all of these mechanisms or accessing a lot of them for training. But I also know that a bigger challenge may be in finding the right candidate for these roles. So that's kind of where it seems like we're having a little bit of an issue. That concludes my presentation. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and come back to you all.
That's great. Thank you, Ebony. We have some time for questions, if anyone has some questions for Ebony.
I've got a question for Ebony really quick.
Yeah.
Ebony, on the COE report, I know I can jump into it. I just haven't opened it up yet, but where, on the final support of new programs, where is COE on that? Is it supporting new programs to be opened, or is it a with caution at this point?
I mean, I would say at this point, it's a little bit with caution, and it's more because of how folks are getting into these jobs. It feels like you need to have that connection with a department that is hiring these roles rather than having students going through the training and then trying to get into the jobs, So that's really my caution here. But beyond that, we do have moderate demand and the wages are good. So it looks like a great pathway for students to get into from that
Okay.
perspective.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Karen, I see you got your hand up.
I do. So, and Carissa may be able to shed some more light on this, but prior to me leaving the safety center, it's been a number of years, and taking this position where you had American River College and SRPSTC offering these courses, they were actually offered through an instructional service agreement through Sac County Sheriff. So it's not like a class that you and I can, well, they do have to leave a certain percent open, but it's not like a class that's offered to the general public and you can put 50 students in. So that's where it's like, I'm looking at the need, unless it's changed since I've been out there. Like Carissa's still out there, so she would know more about that, but.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I think that's the case actually with all of the community colleges, is that there is an affiliation piece. So it's connected to a law enforcement department specifically. So good catch. Jill, I see you have or a question, and then I see Teresa.
Does Teresa want to follow up? Because I think your name was mentioned. Do you want to start first and then I'll ask a question?
Sure, yeah, and it's pronounced Carissa.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
So yeah, we do offer the class, but it's through an instructional agreement with the Sacramento Police Department, not the sheriff's. And so that is the only program we have at this time. And it's 3 different levels of the training, from entry level through more advanced training.
Thank you. I can hop in with my question, Ebony. And it's not really a question, it's more of a statement. And one of the things that we've been talking about related to the work that Sierra College is interested in doing, or ways that we think we can be helpful with our industry partners in this, is really almost a precursor to the post training. It's like you talked about, getting students interested in this line of work, and also helping them better prepare for the more extensive post training, for the very intense interview. And I look forward, I know our panelists are going to get into this a little bit more detail as well, but I think we're kind of seeing it, looking at, we have one dispatch course already, and I see Dan Stockbridge is here listening in today, but it's sort of a general course, a survey course, and we're talking about maybe should we be offering a class that really gets into more nitty-gritty skills that'll help students be successful in getting into these jobs and succeeding through the interview process and the testing process and all of those kinds of things. So again, just a different way of looking at it, or maybe perhaps a different need. We're trying to gather if that's a place that we could be of use.
Great.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Ebony, for your time in compiling all this research, and congratulations on the official promotion to director. It's amazing. With that, I will hand it over to Hillary to lead us through the industry panel discussion.
Thanks, Liz, and thanks, Ebony. So can everyone see my screen? We should have our panelist images up. Okay, great. Thank you. So first, we've got a great panel here with quite a few employers representing different agencies, and I really appreciate everyone participating and taking time out of their busy schedule to be here. It's truly invaluable feedback for our audience. But before we get started, I'm going to introduce everybody. I'm going to go over their bios briefly, and believe me, their bios were much longer and more robust, and we, in the interest of time, we kind of just tightened them up a little bit, but they all are very impressive experts in the industry. Our first guest that I'm going to introduce is Crystal Horak. She began her career as a dispatcher in 2015. During the course of her tenure, she has worked as a member of the tactical dispatch team, assisting crisis negotiators during critical incidents and large tactical events. Crystal was promoted to Dispatcher 3 in 2021, and in 2023, she was selected as the Academy Training Coordinator. She currently oversees all recruiting, hiring, training, and career advancement for all new employees, as well as overseeing the growth and development of all the division's communication training officers. Our next guest is Administrator Claudia Harlan. She started her career in public safety at the age of 17 as an explorer with the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. In 2008, Claudia was hired by the Roseville Police Department to supervise the Records Division, Crime Scene Investigations Unit, and Property and Evidence Units. In 2010, she was promoted to Police Service Manager and currently co-manages the Professional Service Division and oversees the Police and Fire 911 Communication Center. Administrator Harlan serves as the department's agency California Law Enforcement's Telecommunication Systems Coordinator and is a member of several organizations, including the Women Leaders in Law Enforcement, the National Emergency Number Association, and the Association of Public Safety Communications Officials. And then we have Kimberly Picolet. She is the Dispatch Services Manager for Placer County Sheriff's Office. She has 30 years of experience in the dispatch field. After moving out to Folsom, she transferred to the Folsom Police Department in 2003 as a dispatcher and was promoted to a supervisor in 2008. In 2018, she was promoted to the Placer County Sheriff's Office for the Dispatch Services Manager role. And then we have Yvonne Vasquez, supervisor with Sacramento Regional Fire EMS Communication Center for over 6 years. She currently serves as the dispatch training supervisor. Thank you again for joining us today. And we have a few panel questions. I'm going to ask that I'll probably call on folks online. We'll probably go just in order. This first one from Crystal down to Yvonne. But first, the first question I have for you guys is to please provide a brief overview of your agency, your role, and the size of your workforce. Again, I'm going to have Crystal Horak. She's going to start it off for us.
Okay. Thanks for inviting me. This is going to be my first panel discussion. So, all right, I guess I'll just answer the first one then. So we're a primary safety answering point for 911 calls in the city of Sacramento. So that means if you call 911 or the non-emergency line, you're going to be talking to one of our dispatchers if you're in the city. We triage each incoming call based on the situation and then determine what resources would be best suited to address the caller's concerns. So for us, we don't answer anything medical, so we'll transfer to fire. If it happens to not be in our area or the situation's occurring not in our area, we'll transfer to the other agencies. We do have a very rigorous training program that involves specific criteria for each call. So we're teaching them what we're looking for in questioning and how to quickly get those answers. Our dispatchers, need to remain calm and professional during a crisis. So we go through that training. My role as an academy training coordinator is to oversee our hiring, our training, our recruiting. So that means during the probationary period, I oversee the employees' progress. So from the time they're hired through their training process, whether there's any bumps in the road or we need to switch things up, through their probationary period. And our probationary period is 18 months, so they stick with me for quite a while. So yeah, I oversee their progress, and I have a team that I work with to develop the training programs so that each person, we can lead them to success and support them how we can. And as you know, Sacramento is a fairly large city, so we have quite a few dispatchers. Our staffing level right now, we have 55 dispatchers and 9 supervisors, and we have about 25 vacancies. So we're about 31%-ish understaffed. So we're hiring.
Awesome, thank you. And Claudia, can you again provide a brief overview, explain your role and the size of the workforce?
Yes, and again, also thank you for having me. This will be my second panel interview today, so if I have to drink lots of water in between, I apologize. A business overview. I work for the city of Roseville, as you already mentioned, and my role is police administrator. So I oversee the public safety answer point, or known as PSAP, for the city of Roseville. We are a multidisciplined agency. And what that means is not only do we provide police dispatch services, but we also provide fire, and we do the emergency medical dispatch piece as well. Size of our particular workforce in dispatch is we have 25 staff. That includes 4 supervisors, and then I have 2 additional per diem positions as well that help us where we have staffing shortages. We actually just recently acquired those positions within the last year. Those are also a launching point for us. So a lot of the times we'll bring people into those 2 roles, knowing that at some point we'll expect a vacancy. And those people generally, those staff members generally have a desire to go full time, or maybe they're just temporarily in a part-time role because they had a baby, or they're just at that place in their life where they don't want to work full time, or maybe they are working full time somewhere else and they want to work part-time for the community of Roseville as a dispatcher, and we'll hire positions for that purpose in those roles. I think in terms of our dynamics right now, we currently have 2 vacancies, and I have 2 lateral dispatchers in background at the moment who will hopefully successfully pass that phase, and assuming that they do, fingers crossed, then we will be at full capacity with our dispatch positions, and that will include the per diem positions as well.
Thank you, Claudia. And Kimberly, can you provide an overview of your agency, your role, and the size of your workforce?
Sure. So my name is Kimberly Picolet. I'm the Dispatch Services Manager at Placer County Sheriff's Office. We also, as Claudia mentioned, handle not only the Sheriff's Office, but we dispatch for 5 fire districts, which requires our dispatchers to not only handle the law side and be post-certified, but as well, they must be EMD certified for medical pre-arrival. We have 18 allocations for dispatcher 2. We have 6 in training that are just starting, and that still leaves us 4 vacancies. We do also have 5 public safety dispatch supervisors, which basically are floor supervisors. So they also assist with incoming calls, radio traffic, and things along those lines. And then we have a little bit different structure. We have 2 office supervisors, which are dispatch services supervisors, and they kind of handle projects and things like that. They also do assist on the floor when needed for emergency type calls or things along those lines, staffing shortages when needed. But yeah, so that's where we're at right now.
Thank you, Kimberly. And Yvonne?
Hi, thank you for having me. Happy to join today. I am the dispatch training supervisor for Sacramento Regional Fire EMS Communications Center. So we are a secondary PSAP. What that means is we don't handle any law enforcement issues, but we are fire and medical only. So we don't have people going through post. We have our own internal training process. We dispatch for 10 different fire agencies, and we have the law enforcement agencies. If in Sacramento County, once somebody says it's a fire or medical need, they'll transfer to us. So we work with SAC PD, Folsom PD, Elk Grove PD, Citrus Heights PD, Galt PD, Sheriff, CHP, and any university or school dispatches as well. So I'm happy to be here. We handle about 450,000 calls per year, and I think we had just under 250,000 calls for service last year as well. Our staffing, we are at 36 of 38 for dispatchers, and we have 7 supervisors. And we currently have an academy coming up, slated to start right at the beginning of May. So we've got some people in backgrounds and just completing some interview process as well to go ahead and get a full academy and overhire a little bit, because it takes about 2 years to go through our training process. And we know we're going to have some attrition through retirements and different things.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yvonne, I'm going to just keep it on you so you can stay unmiked. We're going to go back down the other way and then I'll start mixing it up. But could you give us some feedback on what you thought about the labor market data presented? Did anything surprise you, or is anything different than what you expected?
I'm sorry, is that for me?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
Okay.
just keep it on you for just a moment. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. No, I really thought that the data was interesting, and I think it accurately kind of portrays what we see. Dispatch has historically been a women-driven industry. We look for a little bit of a different skill set than other professions, right? We're not a segue into firefighting, right? If somebody wants to be a firefighter, we're not really the pathway to get there. Some things we look for specifically are, data comprehension, accurate data summary, active listening, basic typing skills of 40 words per minute, and strong social skills. I think that's maybe one of the key components we've noticed that make a successful dispatcher is you have to be able to command conversations that are difficult. And so that kind of captured a lot of that as far as what the colleges can offer. We utilize the EMD, so the International Academy of Emergency Dispatch system here. And she touched on that just a little bit, but that is a system that we put people through once they've been hired.
Awesome, thank you. Kimberly, I want to give you an opportunity to respond if there was any responses you had on the labor market data presented. Did anything surprise you, or is anything different than what you expected?
I think I was a little surprised by the vacancies and what those were looking like. I expected it actually to be a bit more. And I know it was a Sacramento region, but I wasn't quite sure what that all entailed. Just based on our history with vacancies and hiring, and even at, I actually worked at Sacramento Police Department as well several years ago. It does seem, I just kind of assumed that would be a bigger number, but everything else seemed to kind of fall in line as far as what I would expect to see. So it was very informative.
Great, thank you. Claudia, same question about the labor market data, if you have any responses to it.
Yeah, I agree with Kimberly. I think that not really surprising, the data, other than I expected those ratios to be a little bit different as well in terms of, the vacancy rate. I thought what was interesting, so it all was interesting, but what was, I think, really stood out for me as well is the, and I kind of knew this already, but to see it on paper, it's a different thing, or on the screen, I should say. The presentation is just a lack of opportunity in terms of just some being able to get some education and some certifications in advance of being hired with an agency. We need to fix that, I think. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Crystal, I'll give you an opportunity to weigh in here on the labor market data as well.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, you know, same as what they were saying to just see it laid out. I also thought there would be more vacancies. I mean, given that we have like 25 just ourselves. So I expected it to be higher, but it was interesting to see the stats. It's not very often that we can take a minute to take a look at that. I will say that last week we conducted some interviews. Pretty much every month our posting closes. And so we held interviews on Monday and Tuesday. I think we had 13 people come in. And out of the 13, 11 were male. So there's definitely some kind of switch somewhere where males are more interested, which is great. We welcome that. And we were joking, we're going to have to expand our male locker room because our women's one is so much bigger. So I think that percentage for the genders is gonna change.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting shift. Thanks for sharing, Crystal. And Claudia, I'm going to bring it back to you. This is when I start mixing it up to keep everybody awake. Claudia, would you answer? This is our third question, which is how do you recruit candidates for employment? What general skill levels and educational attainment are you looking for?
So this is, there's a lot to this one, so I'll try to be as brief as I can be. We recruit our candidates in terms of the process itself. We advertise, obviously, our recruitments through social media, city website, but a lot of our recruitment efforts actually are through community engagement nowadays. So we will host, job fairs, and sometimes they're a little bit broader in terms of having a whole city kind of campaign do it. And then in the last year, we had a very specific public safety job fair that really focused more on professional staff versus the sworn side. We have those as well, but we did one that was kind of exclusive to professional staff. We saw a little bit of success out of that. It was surprising how much the community doesn't know about this profession. So it was an interesting dialogue to have with people that attended that job fair. So in terms of recruitment itself, though, we recruit on a continuous level for lateral dispatchers. So, and I think Crystal hit on this a little bit. She mentioned that they're doing the closing again on their dispatch positions. So I'm assuming that's a continuous recruitment as well, Crystal. So we have had a lot of success with that. We've updated our technology as well in terms of how we receive those applications and the screening process and just the hiring process overall, the assessment process, the initial assessment process for hiring, because it's cut that part of it down substantially in terms of it's just more efficient. And that has been very helpful because a lot of times you have people that might put an application and they don't want to wait a month. This is government. Sometimes things, take a while to go through the process. So streamlining that has really, really enhanced our ability to capture quality candidates right at the front end. What do we look for in terms of skills? We want it all. We want, before, I think our industry, and I think my colleagues will agree with me that dispatch used to be, I think, a profession that had a very specific criteria that you had to meet before you could enter the profession or be successful at it. And that criteria included having a very strong type A personality, very technically strong skills, and all of that. And although we do need, people that come in with strong technical abilities, we also need people that come in with very strong soft skill abilities, because we are, after all, in the business of providing customer service and customer care to our communities. So we incorporate all of those components into our hiring process and our assessment process through interview questions, through dialogues, through internship programs, through all kinds of different methods so that we can assess people for those job skills that we're really looking for in both our ones and our twos. So
That's great.
that answered that.
Yeah, were you done? Yeah, because I will, Crystal, I'll kick it back over to you, and you can tell us about the Sacramento Police Department, how you recruit for candidates for employment, and what general skill levels and educational attainment are you looking for?
Okay. Yeah, so our agency requires at least 12 college credits or 4 years of direct customer service experience because our industry requires a tremendous ability to multitask, be fast and accurate and have those decision-making skills. We look to recruit people who have service experience. We search at, colleges, trade schools, technical institutes, high schools. We like to see people apply that are quick to think, on their toes, like they're just on it. People like, we've recruited people that are baristas from like Starbucks or gaming stores, like video gamers. We have some of our dispatchers were prior like hairstylists, bartenders, teachers. So they're able to, type quickly, react quickly, and from each call to call, they learn, but they're able to adapt to the chaotic environment that is dispatch. So we just seen a pattern with the people who worked in jobs prior to this. That's kind of where they came from. We were looking for people that are detail oriented, good communicators, and most importantly, able to remain calm and be assertive. We want people who want to do the job, are willing to put in the time and the effort. A lot of stuff we can train them, and kind of mold them into what we need them to be for them to be successful. As far as recruiting goes, we've been trying to put more focus on social media since it's so prominent. We did used to have the news stations out quite a bit, but it was kind of hit or miss if we would, reach the right candidates. We've been having really good success with our dispatch open houses and hiring workshops. I know we partner with the whole department, but we have a lot more success when we actually host at the comm center. And advertise on social media and have them come out here and do a tour. And we do a presentation on what the backgrounds look like and what the job entails and things like that. So that's been really, really helpful. And we've seen a big boost in applicants. So we'll go out and put flyers on like the job boards and just attend any recruiting events that, we're invited to or we can put together.
Excellent. Thank you, Crystal. Yvonne, could you answer this question for the dispatchers for the fire department? How do you recruit candidates for employment, and what general skill levels and educational attainment are you looking for?
Sure. So we've recently changed how we look for applicants. We are currently using Indeed. We used to use just our website and try to funnel applicants through that, but we wanted to cast a wider net. So we use Indeed. We've kind of removed any single points of failure as far as reviewing a resume. We think there's amazing folks out there, and we don't want to exclude anyone just because they don't check the right box as far as customer service or, oh, they've only worked at Starbucks, right? We find younger folks still have these strong skills, those soft skills, with communication, and we want to be able to capture that. So our process is once they've applied through Indeed with us, we have them take the Indeed typing test, which is a pretty straightforward, I think it's around like 30 words per minute. If they pass that, we're going to send them a critical exam. And if they pass critical, they get an interview with us. We have found that we've got a wider range of people, a lot more males applying. I think the pendulum has shifted a little bit in that direction as well, which we're excited about. And if they pass an interview panel with us, we think they've got those soft skills with communication. Are they calm? Can they be assertive, but kind at the same time, keeping in mind, we are public safety, but we are a customer service industry, right? We're providing a service to the public, and we want to make sure that we are putting our best foot forward with how that's approached. If they do that, they come and they get to sit along with us, and we want them to see our operations, make sure that this is a good fit for them, and have them be able to ask our staff any questions, just see how, what the environment is like, because sometimes that might be the first time that they've ever walked into a comm center. And some people have decided then that it's not for them, and that's okay. That's what that piece of that process is meant to do, right? We don't want anybody to be surprised when they come into work. And I'm so sorry, what's the second part of your question, if you could repeat it for me?
It was, what was the general skill levels and educational attainment you're looking for?
Okay, thank you. So we do require high school diploma or GED. We do have a financial incentive for college degrees in our contract, but we just require the 40 words per minute typing. They have to be able to pass our critical testing, which is that comprehension, data summary, analysis. There's just a minimum threshold that people have to hit, and just being able to quickly have that recall and be able to type and talk or type and listen all at the same time. That's just, most of our job.
Right. Thank you. And Kimberly, can you tell us about the Placer County Sheriff's Department, how you recruit for candidates, and what general skill levels and educational attainment are you looking for there?
Sure. So we, in the past, we've used, similar to everybody else, social media. We still do. That seems to get a lot of ground for that, but we've also utilized the websites that are dispatch specific, posts, things along those lines. Post is not necessarily dispatch specific, but there are dispatch specific websites that people can look at as well. We don't, for our office, get a lot of laterals. Ours tend to be, for dispatch, tend to be entry level. So there's we focus a little bit more. Our lateral application is always open and continuous, and we've now started keeping the entry level position open. And I believe we're testing 3 times a year now, which has brought us a lot more candidates, which is great. We do have a new recruiting software that I know Lieutenant Smith is going to be speaking a little bit at the end here, in the next segment. So I was kind of going to go into the new system that we're using, which has brought in a lot of interest for us. So it's brand new. This is our first time using it. So it's been a bit overwhelming with the response we've got. So I'll let him go a little bit more into that. As far as what we're looking for, again, it's very similar to the other agencies as far as high school diploma or equivalent. I think one thing that on top of everything that everybody else has already said is I do think critical thinking and decision making is huge. The job, you're making decisions on the fly in emergency situations all the time. And so trying to know that every situation is different and what's the right steps to take is something very, very important for a dispatcher role.
Excellent. Kimberly, I'm going to keep it on you.
Oh, okay.
For the next question, do you provide any training in-house to current or prospective workers? And have you partnered with community colleges to provide training?
So we have not partnered with community colleges for the training. We do offer in-house training. We do also send our entry-level dispatchers out to go to a 3-week post course, which we don't offer for us. Sacramento Police is usually the place that we send them if we can get them into it. It's a hot commodity. We actually have 4 going next week to Sac PD for to get the post course completed, since that is a requirement. And on top of that, we do, when they come back, we'll put them through a 3-week in-house academy, which is, we only have such a small number of people. Sometimes we only have 1 person starting at a time or 2. This time we just happen to have 4, which is great. So they are all going to be in an academy type environment to just kind of review the, the CAD systems, penal codes, all of those things that are more agency specific. So, and then once they're done with that in-house academy, then they start their one-on-one training, and they will sit with a trainer that we rotate them through different shifts, different trainers, just to give them a full spectrum of what it's like to work, since every shift is different. Night shift is very different than day shift. And then once they go through that, it's a training process to go through phones, and then you go to radio, and then we have the fireside. So there's a very structured training program that we have in place.
Okay, excellent. And since you brought up the SAC police, I'm going to kick it over to Crystal to answer this question. Sounds like you might have some more, to add to what Kimberly was sharing. So, do you provide any training in-house to current or prospective workers? Have you partnered with community colleges to provide training at the Sacramento Police Department?
Yeah, so we do have a very robust training program. We have paid training from the day you're hired as a dispatcher recruit, and then you attend a 7-week in-house academy. And then that essentially starts your 18-month probationary period where we put you one-on-one with, in training with a dispatcher so that you can learn how to take calls. That lasts about 6 to 8 weeks, and then you're solo at phones for a while. And then we have a 2-week radio training academy. And then there's different phases through radio. So the whole process takes about 18 months after you graduate the in-house academy. And just like you just mentioned, we do host the post course. So it's a 3-week state mandated course that we provide in-house here for the entire region. It is we have a very long wait list. So we pull from, the agencies first because they do, have a time frame that they have to meet those guidelines and send their employees through. And so I'll just mention really quick, one of the disconnects that I've noticed since being over on the academy side since January, we have a huge influx of people very interested in the dispatch career who they call and they say, hey, I'm a non-affiliate and I want to take the post course, which is wonderful. It's a great recruitment opportunity. Our agency specifically, we don't require you to have that post certificate ahead of time. Our agency will pay for and send you to the course. Well, it's here, but most agencies in our area actually will send you once you're hired. And so I try and gently relay that. Some people are adamant that they want to be on the list, and that's fine. We have a list. But right now, I think we have 54 non-affiliates on the list, and those are all people who want to be dispatchers, waiting to get their foot in the door or take the training. So it is a very hot commodity. But yeah, so we do have a training lab here that simulates the work environment, which is really nice. So we can provide that hands-on training. We have an app that we have our recruits use to download our training materials so they can study at home. A lot of hands-on training. We provide a lot of special, assistance to them. We have a mentor program, peer support. So this job in itself is so different than anything else that to have people feel welcome and supported is huge. So we can normally get them through those hurdles. I mean, it's not for everybody. Some people will get, their first week and they're like, okay, not for me. We respect that. But we do have them come in and do like a sit along, for 2 hours to make sure that they know what they're getting into. So so we are partnered with Los Rios Community College. So our employees do receive college credit for their training, which is nice. Our hiring workshops and open houses provide an in-depth, information on the program and the process. So that helps so they're prepared. But yeah, so we're excited. We try and change things as we, learn and adapt. But yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was really informative, Crystal. And Yvonne, can you tell us about what your agency does to provide training in-house to current or prospective workers? And have you partnered with the community colleges to provide training?
Of course. We have not partnered with community colleges to provide training. We do offer, upon hire, we have an 8-week in-house academy before you're moved over to what we call pod training. So we'll have a group of 3 or 4 new hires with 1 trainer. And that lasts anywhere from, depending on the trainee, maybe 10 to 14 weeks. Everybody's a little bit different, right? There's different skill sets, and we want to make sure people are comfortable and ready to work independently. The full training process here takes about 2 years. We're going to get you solid on call taking, and then about 6 months later, we're going to get you trained on what we call main dispatch, where you're looking at every call that comes in, making sure it's coded correctly, the comments look correct, the recommended units are the ones that need to go on these calls. And then about 6 to 8 months after that, we'll put you through radio training. We found breaking it up this way makes people more successful. So our retention rate has been a little higher than it had been in the past, which is good.
That is good. Claudia, can you tell us about the City of Roseville? Do you provide any training in-house to current or prospective workers? Have you partnered with community colleges to provide training?
So we do provide training in-house for dispatchers that are already onboarding with us. We don't have anything per se in terms of a training or a prep program for anybody that's interested in joining the profession at this time. We are, however, started having discussions with Sierra College, with Jill and team on really finding a way to better work together to add a little bit more of maybe that segue. So, but through their dispatch program. So where they come in and have an introduction to the profession, but then they actually have some tie to our agencies here in Placer County, where they might be able to come in and do sit-alongs, or we're actually in the process right now of using some of the Sierra College facilities, their training rooms, their computer rooms, to administer the critical test for our applicants. And we're having discussions about a lot of things related to the dispatch profession and how we can incorporate that into the college setting as well. So that's a really exciting thing for us.
That's great. So I'm just going to keep it on you on that note, since you are kind of developing programming. This is a question everyone else is going to answer too. Do you have suggestions for how the colleges can better prepare students for jobs in the industry, including new courses, programs, curriculum changes, or any other kind of skills that you think they need to, focus on to develop a program that's really going to prepare students for these careers?
Yes, maybe a barista component. No, I'm kidding. But no, I think there's so much to that as well, because I do have quite a few suggestions for it, but in different areas. I think I do think that there is there's a culture shock for people that have never been in any sort of public safety profession. I think regardless of whether or not you're just graduating high school or whether you worked in the private sector for most of your life, the cultural aspect of the job that we do and the calling to work in public safety is something that you really, I think, needs to be emphasized. Probably more so in every aspect, not just, at the college level through these programs, but even through our recruiting and the way that we bring people into the profession. It's not for everybody. I think some of the other panelists already mentioned it. This is it's a job that you really need to be called to do. And I think the multitasking and being able to have common sense, that piece is really important. And part of that is life experience, I think. So how do you teach that is interesting. I think some of it's through exposure, through coaching and mentoring and grooming. From an educational perspective, I think we could add things to the curriculum that give them a little bit more of the cultural view, I think, of what we do. It's a whole different language too, so the terminology, and I'm sure this is something that and I've not, so I guess what I'll say is I don't know what's in the curriculum right now, so I might be speaking out of turn with this, but I think that terminology, understanding the law and the law, specific areas of the law that we will be dealing with, fire terminology, in our case, the emergency medical dispatch piece, and also coming out of that, maybe that coursework with some certification is really important. And not just college credits, but actually maybe coming out of that course with having passed the critical test. So those are things that we're kind of talking about, is maybe incorporating that into the curriculum, as well as all of those other pieces. and like I said, there's so much to it, but those are the things that I can think of, off the top of my head. But the piece again that I'll emphasize is I'm not sure how you teach really, that other sort of common sense piece. I think it's something again that you life exposure, maturity, that potentially life teaches you those things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Claudia, for your thoughts on that. Yvonne, can I ask you to respond to this question on suggestions on how the colleges can better prepare students for jobs in the industry of dispatchers?
Yeah, some of what, if I can piggyback on what Claudia is saying, as far as, it's difficult because dispatching is kind of multifaceted. It's hard to describe until you're doing it. And then people can kind of decide if it's for them or not for them. However, I think the answer is exposure, simulated dispatch environment and listening to real calls and trying to keep up and keep along, with the speed of how things are going and decision making on, which pathway do you think this needs to go, or how would you prioritize this? I think that, with technology getting better and better, there might be ways to incorporate that where we haven't really been able to previously, hopefully, because I think a lot of people are just unaware of us in the industry, right? They think I want to be a police officer, I want to be a firefighter, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a nurse, right? And dispatch is kind of a little hidden niche, if you will. And, I fell into it by accident and love it. And so if people are aware that it's a good career choice, because we're looking for career dispatchers here. We don't want people coming in thinking it's a stepping stone. We have people apply and they're like, oh, I want to work here, but I'm going to be a nurse. I'm like, we can't, you won't be successful here. If you want to be a nurse, you should go be a nurse, right? It's overwhelming to learn this job initially, and we want to make sure we're setting people up for success and not giving them unreasonable expectations that, oh, this is a filler job between this and your real career. We want people to be here for the long term, and we want to invest in them with training and opportunities as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. When you said, you fell into it, it's like, well, if you had to fall into it, maybe we need to make more holes for people to fall into it, or ways that they can. So, thank you. Kimberly, can I have you discuss how you think that colleges could better prepare students for jobs in this industry?
Yeah, I think actually everything that Claudia and Yvonne have said kind of hit the nail on the head a little bit. But, as far as, I think critical testing is huge because it does give you, it is how you get the job, right? That you're testing. Most agencies in this area, probably statewide at least, probably country in the entire United States, are using critical. It's a very, probably the most accurate testing that you can utilize. So it does give you a little of that multitasking to see where you're at, where your skill level is. I think radio ear is very important as well. So I think Claudia kind of alluded to this as well, just listening and trying to understand radio terminology, radio traffic. It's so much different than just having a conversation with somebody. There's a lot of things I think that could prepare a student to have success in this field. On top of that, I kind of already mentioned as well, critical thinking, decision making. Again, Claudia, I don't know how you teach common sense, but that would be great. And just codes, things along those lines. I was thinking about this the other day, and it's very difficult when you come into this field to not only, you're learning so much and so much information is being thrown at you, but I call it simple things now, but simple things like reading a driver's license return, reading a warrant return, things that you do daily. And those things, when you're brand new, it's like reading a different language. So things like that would be, I think, very helpful to somebody that's looking to start in this kind of, to this field. So.
Absolutely. I had never thought of that before until I told a friend of mine who's just become a police officer that I was doing this advisory. And he said, oh yeah, dispatchers have to learn a whole new language. And
Yes.
I'm like, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, it is 100%.
Yeah. Crystal, could you add your thoughts on this question about how colleges can better prepare students for jobs in the industry?
Yeah. I also fell into this job and then now I tell everyone about it because it's not something people think about. But yeah, it's a whole different culture. So definitely knowing what you're getting into, your perspective on life changes. You know, especially if you live in the city that you dispatch in. I mean, I'm in Elk Grove, so not super far, but I still, you know, hang out in this area and it definitely changes your overall. So I try not to let work get to me, but it's hard to separate that. It is definitely a way of life. My kids get mad at me and they're like, you never let us do this or that. And I'm like, well, I wonder why. So just finding you know, work and work-life balance. But I think a job preparedness course would be great. Like how to interview, how to fill out background documents. One of the troubles we run into is people don't always know how to prepare because the, you know, just the process to get a job here is so extensive and invasive naturally. But you know, it'd be beneficial to have courses that have like technical hands-on stuff, you know, for example, critical, like we were all saying, the entrance exam, you need to be able to read and write quickly, make logical and practical, you know, choices. Maybe something that caters to stress management skills would be beneficial because you're hearing awful things. And even if you're not hearing awful things, it's just the schedule, the forced overtime, just the busyness of it is a lot, and some people have a hard time with that. So we do have a lot of, you know, work related resources, but just kind of learning those skills early on for life in general. Breathing exercises you can do, diffusing techniques for irate or angry people. I think you can use that in literally any job. You know, anything that can help them to better multitask, control a conversation is amazing. I think the younger generation, you know, they love texting and writing, and there's not as much face to face. So we're seeing in interviews, you know, like myself looking down right now, the eye contact and, you know, direct answers. You know, you need those people skills and talking skills, not texting skills. I mean, typing is great, but you know, just more conversations. But like ethics and leadership would be a good asset too. But yeah, people skills. Back to basics.
Thank you. That was great. Kimberly, I'm going to start you off with this next round of questions. And the next question is, and some of you guys have kind of indicated well, what positions do you have the most difficulty filling? And then the second half of that question is, what skills gap do you see frequently from some applicants? I know we've, you know, said some before, but just in terms of really kind of bringing it home, you know, what are the skills gaps that you don't see on applications? And then what are the positions you have difficulty filling? Kimberly, will you give us
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned before, we do not get a lot of lateral applicants. So entry level is probably the most challenging for us, just because they are starting off brand new. It also could have some benefits that they're not bringing in habits from another agency that maybe we don't do, and it's sometimes hard to shift that. However, I would say that trying to get quality applicants, because the job is so vast and there's so many different, you know, fingers that are part of this job, you know, 7 monitors and trying to just keep everything accurate. And somebody mentioned a minute ago about attention to detail. It's huge. So as far as, you know, those positions, I would say that's hard for us to fill. The success rate, I think a lot of agencies, I believe it used to be at least 80% turnover for entry level. I'm not quite sure. I don't want to say that that's where it's at now, but at one point during my 30 years, that's where it was. And then as far as the skills that are missing, or that where we seem to see the failure, is I would say, I don't want to keep going back to multitasking, but that is a huge part of it. Multitasking and being able to keep up with a variety of things, people talking to you in the room about a call that you're working, and then the radio traffic and the phone traffic. Our dispatchers do phones and radio at the same time when need be. So having to listen to radio in one ear and answer a phone on the other ear. Those things are not for everybody. So it can be very challenging for them. On top of that, this is not something that you could really put on an application, but the hours and the shifts that Crystal was just talking about, until you're in the environment and working 16-hour days, it's fine and dandy, but when you're doing it on the regular basis, it's people get exhausted and there is no work-life balance. So I would say that's the biggest struggle for a lot of people as well.
Well, thank you. Yvonne, can I have you answer that question about the most difficult positions to fill? And then the skills gaps you're frequently seeing from applicants.
Sure. Entry level is generally what we're looking for. We do have an option in our contract for laterals, but we don't specifically post jobs just for laterals, if you will. So I guess I would say entry level because that's really what we're looking at. We've had more success with this new system we're using and kind of breaking up our training process. I think industry nationwide average, I think it's 30% retention on new hires if I am pulling that out of the back of my brain correctly. But I think we're a little over 50% right now. So we're feeling like we've made some headway. The skills that we see kind of a disconnect with our applicants, the majority of our applicants don't pass the typing test. Honestly, I think last year we had over 6,000 applicants through Indeed, and that was great. Most of them didn't complete the typing test, so maybe attention to detail and reading the line that says, please complete the typing test. We reach out, that follow through, the extra steps, we intentionally put those there to make sure that we're able to attract people who can follow one-step directions or make it slightly more difficult, right? Because the training process is pretty intense. So just follow through, typing skills, and then the social skills. I think that's the biggest part is, and that's what we're looking at in these panel interviews is, do I think you can do this on the phone? I can always teach you to type a little faster. If you hit our minimums, you'll get faster as things go on. And yes, you have to learn a new language. We will teach you all of that. But do you have the critical thinking skills and the social skills to be able to put all of those concepts together to be successful? And I think that's probably our biggest disconnect.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Claudia, can I have you respond to this question on the difficult positions to fill and then the skills gap you're seeing in applicants?
Yes, and I would agree with most of what Yvonne and Kim already said. I mean, right now we're in a good place in terms of the positions that we have. We're getting more applicants than we have positions for, and we're getting some really good ones, which is good, but that can change at a moment's notice. So I think, and Kim said it well. I think that there are, and I've already said it before, so I don't want to, repeat it over and over again, but the gaps really are, those other skills that we're talking about, the multitasking and those very specialized, skills that you need to have to be successful in this position. So I really didn't have much more to add. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Crystal, were there positions that you'd like to identify or a skills gap that you'd like to add in terms of things you're missing in applications?
Yeah, same thing. We've been talking about, the largest skill gap from what we've seen is the ability to multitask and think and react quickly to a changing environment. There is a learning curve to this profession and you have to be able to adapt quickly. It's hard to simulate because there's a large stress component associated. So having the ability to control a difficult caller with your voice while operating an intense computer system while, translating that someone is saying police codes and then you're, taking what they're, it's just a lot of stuff while you're trying to remain calm, providing specific direction to that caller. You have to load your map, you have to, do all these things. Request fire. So we have all these elements to it. So it's just a lot, and you need to do it accurately. You have to ask questions in the appropriate order. Does this person have weapons? I mean, there's so much to it because there's not just citizen safety, but officer safety, that type of thing. And then you have to be ready for the next call. So it's very quickly. But you have to do all these things essentially within like 30 seconds with no errors. And so that's just the expectation of being a dispatcher. So to answer the question, I guess all the positions are difficult to fill because the job itself is so intense. So
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a mosaic of different skill sets that you guys are developing or looking for in applicants. And Kimberly, I think I was going to start off with you on this final question for the day. How do you see the skills needs changing due to changing market dynamics? Are there any policy or automation and technology or environmental things that are going to require a different skill set?
I think it's ever changing. I feel like every day you walk in, there is something new, some new system, something that has changed from the day before. So, for example, that text to 911 is, even though it's not as that new anymore, it's, that's a change. How now you're typing to people, to the public to find out what's going on. Videos now, there's videos where the dispatcher can actually see what's going on when the caller calls in. So there's all of these ever-changing systems and requirements that also change the stress level. The more that you can see when you're behind the phone, you don't have to see exactly what's going on. You interpret it in your mind, but actually seeing a visual on that can be difficult. We haven't had to do that just yet, but I believe it's going to be coming soon. And just the fact that everything is automated. I mean, you're not using a pen and paper for anything anymore. Everything is computerized. So having those skills is imperative, and being able to adapt and change to receiving multiple systems and being required to monitor multiple systems. You have security cameras, you have license plate readers, things along those lines that you don't think of when you think of this job specifically, but it all usually lands here in some way or another. So it's kind of the only things I can think of off the top of my head.
No, those were great. That was very interesting. Thank you. Crystal, I'm gonna shoot it over to you. How do you see skills needs changing due to any changing dynamics like technology, policy, automation, or in the environment?
Yeah, just like she was just saying, I mean, it's the same kind of thing, right? So we need people to be able to adapt and be able to change because, sooner than later we will have what they call next gen 911 platform. So, we'll be able to eventually video chat, which is going to add a completely different element with stress management. Where people are uploading photos that we normally wouldn't see. Videoing while texting. I mean, it's just going to be a lot. So we want someone or people that are able to do that, but we still need them to be able to read a map. So like basic skills that, we can't find with Google or Google Maps, like being able to make a decision without having to Google it and just rely on your instincts versus like, oh, let me check that. Our younger generation, it's like, oh, wait, we have to read a map. How do we do that? And so we're actually having to train them how to read a map, which you wouldn't think would be a thing, but it is. I mean, with my kids, same thing. I'm like, oh, I guess you don't know because we just plug it into Google Maps and it tells you where to go. You can't do that. If our phone lines go down, you have to be able to fill out our manual mode card or tell a person where to go based on north, south, east. Like there's just basic things that you have to be able to revert to. But yeah, when the videos and the texting are more frequent, we need to be able to adapt to both extremes. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yvonne, would you let us know about what kind of dynamics you see as affecting, your industry in terms of policy, automation, technology, or environmental?
Yeah, I'm hopeful that with all this technology that's coming out, this NG911 that we're talking about, or videos, I'm hopeful that we can leverage that to make our job easier and to make people more successful long term. You know, the people talk about younger generations being very different than our older generations, but I think they bring a huge skill set of they're already in the technology. They understand it better, right? They are into the gaming and new programs that are coming out. And so they're better in a better position to easily adapt that technology and kind of fold it into their other skills. So I'm hopeful that this new technology, not only will it make our first responders safer and our public, we can provide a higher level of service, but that it actually will help make our job a little bit easier in, you know, trying to figure out what's actually going on in a situation when we're talking to somebody on the phone. So there's a lot of different things that are coming out every day, and we just have to be open as an industry to looking at that and saying we want to be early adopters, right? We want to have a seat at the table when we talk about how this technology is going to affect the.
I'm not sure if you, I may have lost you, so sorry.
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. About how this technology is going to change kind of our landscape. And so if we want to be able to say, hey, we need it to do this or we need it to do that, we have to be willing to make those changes for the people that we're going to be hiring and that they're going to be coming up and we're going to be training the next leaders in the next few years. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that little glimmer of hope. Hopefully that the tools are useful and helpful and that we have enough time to learn how to use them. Claudia, do you want to share your thoughts on this, on the skills needed, or how you see skills needed changing due to changing market dynamics, either in technology or policy or in the environment?
Yes, I agree with all of my colleagues on this. Everything they said, I 100% agree with. I think the thing that we're on this technology trend, and it helps us in many ways, but it hinders us, I think, in others. And that's my concern, is that we get so used to the technology doing so much that when that technology fails, what do? And so I think the skill sets that I'd be cautious that we get so, you know, I don't want to say invested, we have to be invested in technology that's coming and preparing for that while not losing the manual abilities or skill sets that we have, and making sure that we incorporate that into, you know, just our making sure we're incorporating that into our day-to-day culture as well, so that we don't get used to just the technology doing all of that for us. We've had, especially in our county, a couple of instances where, you know, our PSAP technology has gone down, and having to rely on kind of the old school way of doing things has come in helpful. So I think those two kind of different classes of employees that we're seeing now, where, you know, you've got the more seasoned ones and then you have the newer generation. It's a really neat thing to watch how they kind of balance each other out, because they're helping each other grow in the industry. One, because some are very tech savvy, but others are, you know, much more versed in how to do things the old school way. So cybersecurity is a big one, you know, obviously. So that's something that's really big on our radar, and getting used to having the interoperability that we have, or that we're creating with our technology, is something that's really powerful for us in this business, in terms of being able to achieve, you know, our goals and do our jobs. But like I said, again, it's just understanding, I think, that the technology it's only going to continue to grow. We have to adapt, and we have to find ways to also prepare for those situations where those might not be available to us, or to the extent that we're used to having them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it was Kimberly. I can't remember if it was Kimberly or Crystal who were talking about that necessity to also be able to read a map, not just follow your phone. So yeah, thank you. Well, that was our final question on the Valley Vision and Planning Committee side. And now we can open it up for folks that are attending. If there is any questions to share. D'Angelo, I don't know if you've been watching the chat. Maybe if there's anything that's come up in the chat, we could share those questions first and then see if anybody else has something.
No question in chat right now. It's a lot of thank yous.
Okay, I've got a lot of thank yous. Is there, I'll just give it just a second here. Anybody have any questions for our panelists? Okay, fabulous. We have one more speaker. And thank you so much for all of the industry experts that sat on the panel. Your feedback was really thoughtful and very specific. So I really appreciate those answers and responses. And then I'm going to pass it over to Liz.
Awesome. We are going to move on to the employer highlight from Placer County Sheriff's Department. I would like to introduce David. David, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. First of all, thank you guys so much for having myself and Kim on here. I'll do a little bit of a correction. I'm an acting lieutenant right now, so if you happen to see the sergeant stripes on, that's why. But I'm currently serving as the dispatch manager alongside Kim. I come with a bit of a different experience background, as in my time in dispatch right now has only been about 2 months. I've had 18 years in law enforcement, but 2 months in dispatch, because after a 30-year career, Kim is retiring here in about 2 weeks. So we're excited for her, and congratulations to her. In terms of everything that we've been discussing this afternoon, I think a couple things that I want to highlight is, first of all, the new hiring approach we are taking here at Placer County Sheriff's Office. Kim alluded to it, but one thing that we are really honing in on is the use of technology. And we did that by incorporating a new recruitment software called All-Star Recruitment that leverages AI technology along with social media platforms that we've already built up to specifically target who it is we're looking for in terms of specific assignments. So we're using it for deputies, dispatchers, obviously, correctional officers, and any of our professional staff, what we refer to as ALCs. This has increased our candidate pool by a pretty substantial margin. For an example, in the past, when we've had our county HR do testing for dispatch, we've typically seen 15 to 20 dispatchers take the post test during our 3 different times of the year. This past one that happened a week ago, we saw that number jump to 120 individuals took our post test, and then we'll be going through our hiring process that includes the different things that everybody talked about here, the critical interviews, background checks, things of that nature. So just increasing that candidate pool by that amount makes us very optimistic when it comes to filling those vacancies that so many people are feeling. I'd be happy to answer any questions that people might want to ask offline. I think my contact information should be on here, but it's been a very successful. We've seen that type of numbers throughout all of our different candidate pools, and we're going to start utilizing it for different job openings that we have also. Another thing that I started trying to figure out when I first came in here, as we're dealing with the staffing shortages, is what is it that we do to improve our success rate when it comes to trainees? Something that we've focused on in here is the culture of the place, because I think not only is it the difficulty of getting through the training environment that everybody discussed, but I'm sure all the panel experts with all their experience can also talk about the fact that coming into a dispatch center as somebody with no law enforcement experience, no real understanding, it's a different environment to walk into for sure. And there's a lot of stresses that come along with the interactions that happen within the dispatch center. There's a lot of stresses that come along with the calls that our new dispatchers are taking that they aren't necessarily prepared for when they take the call for that first suicide that they deal with or first violent crime they deal with. It impacts them in a way that I don't think we all recognize or remember, because a lot of us have been doing it for such a long time. So how do we create a culture that properly prepares these young individuals to deal with those type of things, properly prepares our CTOs, our communication training officers, to walk our young individuals through those type of experiences? We've done a much better job this time around of front loading the training to make sure that when they are initially sitting next to a CTO, that they have as much training as possible to prepare them for what it is they're going to experience. For us as an agency, we incorporate a lot of sit-alongs, which is the dispatcher version of ride-alongs, where we invite potential candidates to come and sit alongside of a dispatcher or a CTO for a few hours so they can get a good understanding of what it is the job expectations are. And then we do a question and answer night for all these candidates that we're reaching through this all-star program that we have, where for about 2 hours, we give them a tour of the agency. We talk about the background process. We give them some tips and pointers when it comes to interviews. We give them a tour of the dispatch center and try to help them feel as comfortable as possible when they're hopefully walking in to the office for the first time in 2 or 3 months after they get through the hiring process. Our hope is that this alleviates some of the burden that we've felt when it comes to vacancies. Right now, we're operating, like Kim said, at about just over a 50% vacancy. We're feeling the same struggles that everybody else is feeling, so we're trying to find creative ways to alleviate that, because that doesn't only put a burden on the new individuals coming in and our desire to get them through, but currently right now we have built-in overtime as part of the normal shift that every dispatcher works on a weekly basis. And we're concerned about burnout. We're concerned about this not being the job for people and wanting to move on because they don't have that work-life balance. So trying to create that as much as we can is super important to us. Placer County Sheriff's Office as a whole, it's a great organization. I came from a couple other agencies. I worked for Fairfield and Citrus Heights prior to coming here. I've worked in different training environments. And so we're trying to incorporate all the experience that we have here in this center and in this organization to fix some of these problems that we're seeing, not only for us as an agency, but as a profession as a whole, that I know that the panel spoke about. I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has. I don't know if there's anything else you guys would like to know.
Perfect. That sounded wonderful, David. I'm glad that you're making strides to look at your openings creatively. As we wrap up the session, I want to thank all the speakers and panelists and participants for their valuable contributions. I was a previous Starbucks barista in another lifetime, so I've had a couple of friends who have left to become dispatchers over the years. And I will say that Jennifer's comment about dispatcher time is very true. You guys were very informative and quick. It was amazing.